Rethink what it means to sell. What does that mean? We're going to explore that today and dive in here on today's episode. But first, if you're an entrepreneur who is interested in branding in the creative industry and want to amplify your skills, your mindset, and your remote work lifestyle, then click that subscribe button and turn on all notifications and give us a like if you enjoyed the show. I'm your host, Steve Reed, and this is Brand or Die. We're going to be rethinking what it means to sell. This is Proclamation 4 of the Win Without Pitching Manifesto by Blair Enns. And as always, I'm just covering some highlights from the book. There is so much more in between the lines that I'm not giving away because I want you to actually go and get this book. I have a copy of it right here. I always like to show that in each and every episode, but definitely go snag that on Amazon. When I first read this in the book, it took me back to a time in my life when I was doing, or I was being told to do some hardcore selling. And every step along my path has been something that brought me to this point today. So sometimes I feel like I'm a little embarrassed to talk about some of the things I did in the past, but I think I've pretty much gotten over that. I sold vacuum cleaners when I was really young and struggling, and I didn't have my business put together, and I was looking for anything to be able to pay the bills. And so I saw this ad in the newspaper. And I don't know if you remember what those things are, but there was like this paper that we would buy. Anyway, I saw this ad and it said setting up and taking down displays, and it was $1,800 a month. I was just a newly married young entrepreneur. The idea of making $1,800 a month to me sounded like a lot of money. This is like 2003 or 4, something like that. I get there and I'm sitting down in this lobby of this little strip mall type area, and it looks like it was very shoddily set up and whatnot. I'm not going to say which door-to-door vacuum cleaner company it was, but you could probably guess. But I didn't know that at the time, and I wouldn't have gone if I would have known that, but I was desperate for money. And so I just went there, setting up and taking down displays. All right. It was like, maybe it's at a mall or something. And all right, displays, marketing, advertising. It's kind of a little bit in my wheelhouse. And I'm looking across at the other people that are sitting there as well. This one dude, he's all like tatted up. He has raggedy beard. It looks like he just got out of prison. Pretty rough looking dude. And then there's some other people in there. And I'm sitting there and I'm wondering, I'm like, what am I getting into here? So they take us back into the room and they basically explain, this is what we're doing. We're setting up and demoing these vacuum cleaners. And oh my gosh, I could do a whole podcast just on that experience, but they have created this way of selling these very expensive machines in a way that is, I personally feel, very manipulative, at least what I saw with the people I was with. The way we went in, we were really pressuring people to make the sale. I'd do the demo and then I'd push them a little bit to get the sale. And then a closer would come in and they would really crank down on them. And it was very uncomfortable. It was a very uncomfortable place to be in. And I didn't like it. I only got 2 sales. And one of them was because a guy came in and offered, he knew how much they were valued at. So he just offered cash for just the price of the machine, and they gave it to him because they just wanted to, get the sale, and they didn't make any money off of it. So I don't want to get too much into that whole story, right? But what ended up happening is I saw people pressured into sales, and I didn't have to do a lot of that pressuring, but I saw like the hammer come down. I saw the strategies and the techniques, and they were not making decisions that were in the best interest of the customer. It didn't matter what the customer's needs were. We were going to people living in trailers, selling them a $2,000 vacuum. And they had this whole sales process. And from my experience there, it was not very effective. It's mostly because of the market they were targeting. But still, just the pressure that was coming down on, and realizing these people didn't need this type of vacuum. I mean, they could have literally spent the next 20 years buying cheap vacuums and maybe replacing them every couple years or so and been just fine. So I didn't like the idea of pressuring people. And that got me out of my career, like really not liking sales. I didn't like the selling process. And I think there's a lot of other people that may feel that way just because they have those types of experiences. So this proclamation is all about rethinking what selling means and looking at it in a different way. And I'm very, very comfortable with the approach that Blair talks about here because it's about doing what's in the best interest of the client and focusing on what their needs are. So we're going to dig into that. So the first quote from the book here, it says, "We will embrace sales as a basic business function that cannot be avoided. And so we will learn to do it properly as respectful facilitators." And I love that phrase because I like the idea of facilitating something rather than just forcing something onto somebody. I'm facilitating a process that is designed to get people great results, to get them what they want, and also to get what I want. And if it's a mutually beneficial thing, then we have a good fit. So he also says we recoil from the S word because we are seeing selling as the distasteful act of talking others into things. And as long as we see it that way, we're never going to like sales. Now, some people might not mind. They're like, I'll talk people into things all day long. I don't care if they need it or not. I'm going to make the sale. I'm going to hustle and I'm going to go for it. If that's your thing, then do your thing, right?
Coffee's for closers only.
But it's not my thing. And if you also feel like that's not your thing either, then this is something that you're going to want to pay attention to because I do not want sales to be some kind of distasteful act. I'm very concerned that everything in my business is just straight up, very clear. There's no deception. There's no trying to force something into people's business or their lives that isn't going to benefit them. I intentionally will withhold and direct people away from spending money. I narrow the scope of websites so we can launch faster without them overspending. And so I'm constantly trying to save my clients money and do things that would make sense for their business that I would do myself. So we're going to get into this because this is where it meshes really well with personally the way I like to do business. There's a section in the book called A Tale of Two Salespeople, and it just kind of contrasts the experiences that I think each and every one of us have had with salespeople, like one salesperson who's very pushy, trying to force you into something, and you feel really like gross and dirty afterwards. After you made the transaction because you got pressured into something, you feel kind of stupid and used and puts a bad taste in your mouth, And then the other kind of salesperson who really is looking out for your best interest, who may recommend things for you that would make less of a commission for them, that would make them less money, but they see it as this is the right thing for you. And thinking about how you feel about those two processes and which one you prefer, and thinking about that in terms of how do you want your clients to feel when they deal with you. And so I think that's a very important thing to realize is that there are different ways to do sales. It doesn't only have to be this one way. So next he says, making things and selling things are the two basic functions of business. And yeah, that's true. That's actually a very succinct way to put it, right? Making things and selling things, whether you're making a physical product or you're making a framework or you're making some kind of philosophy or pattern that people can follow. But he says, for our business to succeed, we must succeed at both. We must do both of these things. Again, emphasizing the sales aspect. He says, we cannot be in business without embracing selling, which is true. Because if you're not good at sales, then you're not going to make any money. I mean, that's kind of obvious, right? We cannot disappear immediately after the transaction is concluded and leave the client to wallow in his buyer's remorse. Now, I don't think that the client's necessarily going to have buyer's remorse if we disappear right after the transaction. I think it depends on what it is. In creative work, if somebody wants a logo, they pay for the logo, they get the logo, and then they go on. It's the same thing for like graphic design, sometimes even websites to a degree. That's really how I used to do business. Nowadays, I'm focusing a lot more on sticking with the client and having just a small handful of clients that I can work with, deliver continual value. It's like, why just move from one client to the next? But I don't really want to disappear from my clients after the transaction's been made. And I need to make sure that my strategy is a good fit with my client. So I talk to them and I make sure that this is a client that wants to engage with me on an ongoing basis. I can actually leverage the things that we're designing, combine them with advertising, lead generation, and continue to drive traffic and sales to that client so that they are prospering and growing. And I'm helping to make that happen and supporting them on an ongoing basis. And so I think that is probably my favorite type of business situation to be in as a creative, is being able to offer that to my clients. Next, he says there's only one way we can afford to sell: the way of the respectful facilitator. And again, this is really important for creatives, I think, because the things that we design are meant to have an impact. When people come to us for creative work, they're expecting to get some kind of result by having that, whatever it is. And so we need to understand that, and we need to make sure that whatever services we're offering are going to be a good fit for them. We don't want to try to shoehorn all of our stuff into a client where it's not really going to make a big impact. So there's a lot of times where business will come to me and I just don't feel comfortable working with that business. Like I'm not the best fit, and I would advise someone to go elsewhere. I had that happen just that was maybe like 2 weeks ago. Someone was referred to me and they told me about what their industry was and what they were trying to do. And I looked at it and I said, I don't have a lot of specialty here, and I don't think I could deliver the best results to this industry. And so I just did a quick search and I found marketing and creative companies that specialized in that. And then I sent it to them, and it was just like the top 10 companies that cater to that specific thing. And I said, you might want to try looking here. And I think you could find some help that's going to be better suited to what you're doing. And that was the right thing to do. Now he's likely able to go on and find a much better fit than working with me, because I wouldn't have been the right person. Next, Blair talks about a new model for selling. And I really, really like this because this really puts it into perspective. And it's 3 different points. The first one is to help the unaware. The second one is to inspire the interested. And then the third is to reassure those who have formed intent. And each one of these, again, I don't want to just reveal all of the aspects of this book. I want people to go and get the book, because honestly, I would have to read word for word through it on this thing for you to get all the value. He's packed so much value into this. So the first one is to help the unaware. And there's a quote associated with this. He says, the role of our thought leadership is to educate, not to persuade. And that seems counterintuitive because you tend to think that selling is all about persuasion. But in his model, it's not. So when he talks about educating people, what does that mean? Experts create content that allows them to articulate their claim of expertise. And they do that often. And so that's the first step there, is to help the unaware. So what I do, like on this show and on Instagram, LinkedIn, I post things that I think will be helpful to people. Yeah, sometimes I'll post some of my work, but I like to post just ideas, concepts, theories. I like to provide people value, because in doing that, I'm able to also show some of my expertise and experience in those particular areas, right? So you want to make sure that if your desire is to sell and be seen as an expert in whatever field you're in, you want to educate. And that education can take many forms. But if people begin to follow you and read or watch or listen, and they hear you talking time after time, they're going to go at some point, this is the person who can help me because they understand what I need help with. And I know that they'll be able to help me in the way that I need. So I think one of the best ways you can market yourself is just to put your expertise out there in some form in the way that your target audience is going to want to consume it. If your target audience is 70-year-old men, then TikTok is probably not the place to do it because there's not a lot of 70-year-old men sitting around watching TikTok videos, right? Likewise, if your audience are 15-year-olds, Facebook's probably not the way to go because that's where all the old people are, according to them. All the old guys are on Facebook. Your parents and grandparents are on Facebook, right?
I'm with it. I'm hip.
So you want to go where your audience is and speak to them on the platforms that they hang around on and give them information that they will find useful that shows that you are able to help them. So you're helping the unaware. The second one is about inspiring the interested. And this quote here says, "Inspiration is the primary role of our website. It need not even be our own work that we show here to inspire the interested, just inspirational outcomes." And so even on this show right now, I am sharing some of my own thoughts about another author's work. And I'm sharing my own personal experiences with the little tiny snippets from the book showing how they mesh up. I didn't write this book, but I'm talking about it and giving some additional value. So even on your website, if you have a blog on your website and you can show the work of other people and comment on it and offer suggestions or say, hey, this was executed perfectly. And by doing that, you're showing that you understand certain things about the work. If you're showing a bunch of, let's say, crappy logos and saying these logos are amazing, then people are going to get, okay, that's what their standard is. But if you're able to find really unique, excellent work that is within the niche you're targeting, and you're saying, this is what perfection looks like, this is what excellence looks like, it shows your taste and the level of value that you aim for, even if it's not your work, right? And that inspires those that are interested. So by the time they come to your website, even within your social media, if you're throwing some work in there, things that you've done or commentary on other work, then you're basically inspiring people. So that's the next step. So you're educating first, then you're inspiring, you're giving them a vision of what's possible. You're showing them the dream outcome that this could be you and I can help you get there. So you're facilitating, you're guiding, you're not persuading or forcing. So number 3 is reassure those who have formed intent. This one was a really interesting section to me for a couple of reasons. He focuses on after the sale. Sometimes there's that moment of panic where maybe they regret or they're having second thoughts, and that this can happen within those first 48 hours. Like, oh my gosh, what did I do? Did I make the right choice? They're second guessing themselves. He talks about the importance of reassuring those who have formed that intent. They decided at one point this was the right thing, but now they may be questioning themselves. He says that it's not in the nature of most creative people to offer the reassurance that the client seeks post-sale. And he says we tend toward excitement at a time when he requires the logic and consistency of hearing about our defined approach. To put this in different words, a lot of times as creatives, we ramp up the excitement. If somebody's having doubts, we're like, but don't you remember we had all these things and I showed you this and I showed you that. And we're trying to get them to go back and relive that initial experience, but they already did that. And it's not necessary to take them back and try to excite them again, because that feels manipulative. It does, because all it feels like is you're just trying to manipulate their emotions and their excitement to get them to continue on the path. And what he says is that they require calmness at this point. And so what we should do, instead of trying to cheerlead and pump them up at this point, is it's time to reassure. And when I hear the word reassure, I think of like very calm voices talking about things logically. So that's where he suggests you map out your defined approach. And you say, okay, well, let's go over this again. So this is what we talked about. This is what we decided. Now here's the process, A to Z. Here's how it's going to happen. Step 1, we're going to do this. Step 2, we're going to do this. Step 3, we're going to do this. And I just did this, in fact, yesterday with a client. We just started a new project. And what I did is I took them into a whiteboarding tool, and I just opened up my whiteboard and I shared my screen because they still weren't sold totally on the approach I was suggesting. They're like, but what about this and what about this? So I took it and I wrote it out on a whiteboard, and I made like a sequence of things that needed to happen, from where the data starts to what happens next to the solution and then the end customer. And I said, we have this figured out. We need to figure out this part and this part. So this is what you're hiring me to do, is to solve here and here. So these are the next steps. We need to decide B, C, D, E, dun, 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 dun. And as we're able to map it out very calmly and logically, he got it. And he was like, okay, I finally get this now. I understand. And so it's a very logical series of steps. We're mapping it out. It all makes sense. And now I have reassured my client. They're now sold. And I learned this from Chris Voss. He wrote a book. It's up there. It's called Never Split the Difference. I don't know if you've ever read Never Split the Difference. It's very, very good. And he was a hostage negotiator. He negotiated with terrorists.
Why don't you come on down here to Police Plaza and we'll figure this out like a couple of men, huh? Just come on down here.
And the reason he says never split the difference is because you can't split the difference when you're a hostage negotiator. You can't just say, well, you kill half of them, but then give the other half to me. No, you want to get them all back. So he was in a position where you couldn't split the difference. It was all or nothing, and you had to completely win each time. So what Chris explains is that when he was negotiating with people, he never wanted to hear, you're right. And a lot of us, we're thinking, well, that's what we want to hear. We want people to think we're right. But he said what actually happens when people say you're right is they're just trying to get you to shut up. They're just agreeing with you. They're just going, okay, you're right. You know, they're just, I don't want to hear about this anymore. Okay, whatever. And that's not good enough. He goes, you need to get people really to be on the same page with you. And so instead of hearing you're right, you want to hear that's right. Because when somebody says that's right, now they are convinced internally. They know that it's right. And clients may not say those exact words like that, but I've come to watch them very closely. And whenever I see them agree to something, I'm starting to like see the difference between a you're right and a that's right. And I want to see it click in their heads. I'm not going to stop reassuring and explaining until it clicks in their heads and they're sold. Because until that happens, we're going to continue having problems. And it's very, very important to make sure that is established throughout this process, because you don't ever want the client at any point to think that you're trying to manipulate them in any way. You want to be providing the best level of service and making sure you are on the same page working together so that you're high-fiving at the end of this. So to go over it one more time, help over time. So we help over time by writing, publishing, doing these different things to educate, and then we inspire when it's appropriate to do so. There are definitely times that we want to inspire people, and it's important to make sure that those things are happening at the right time. And so a lot of these things are just timing issues and realizing where people are in a process. The last one is reassure at the end. So there's kind of like a timeline here. At first, we're educating. And as soon as they come to get on board with us, That's when we inspire them. That's when we talk to them about the dream, the outcome, and what the possibilities could be. And we get them pumped up, and we try to align their vision with ours, get on the same page, and say, okay, we have a way to move forward. But shortly after that, that's where the reassurance needs to come. And we don't necessarily need to reassure if we suspect the client's having a crisis. We want to come in and reassure, I think, anyway. And between 24 hours and 48 hours, send them an email, send them a message. I like to send people Loom videos. So I'll record a Loom video, and it's always a good idea to record that and say, hey, I'm really grateful to be working with you. I think you've made the right decision because of A, B, and C. When we discussed these different things and we built out this approach, I strongly feel that this is going to be the best thing for you because of X, Y, and Z. This is going to come out here. So you have that logical flow, and then getting them something like that, that's only going to strengthen their resolve and help them stay on the course to getting what they want. Because ultimately, they're spending some money with you. They're investing. And when you're investing, you want to see return on your investment. You don't just want to throw a lot of money out there and realize it's just going to go to nothing, that you just wasted your money. You want to get back more than you put in. And so it's very important that we work with our clients to help them understand exactly how that's going to happen. And if we don't know how that's going to happen, then we need to learn our craft a lot more and really, I think, focus on niches that we can specialize in so we can bring much more to the table than just being people that chuck designs at people, take the money and run. I think we need to stay more engaged in the process. You'll be more profitable as a business, and you're going to help your clients more. Anyway, at the end here, walk away from bad fits. This can be very hard to do for a lot of people because you're saying no to money. And at one level, you could argue that, look, you shouldn't be saying no to any money, right? I mean, if it's the whole bird in a hand thing. If you're new, sometimes you just got to take what's out there. If you're brand new and you don't really know how you're going to niche down yet, and you're trying to figure things out, yeah, if a client comes to you and you think you can serve their needs well, and it's going to bring value to that business, then sure, go ahead and take the job. But it's also very important not to get stuck there, because you can get stuck trying to be everything to everyone. And then all that's going to do is lock you in as a commodity, and you're going to get beat down in price forever. And you're never going to have the opportunity to develop deep expertise anywhere because you're spread so thin. If you're spread so thin doing work for all these different people, making very little money, you're going to be working all the time just to get by, and you're not going to deepen your expertise anywhere. And so that's not good for you. That's not good for your clients. So it's very important to have a plan of attack. And if you don't know where to start, I mean, I was stuck here for a long, long time. So if you're a creative entrepreneur and you want to escape that cycle and you want to find something more concrete that you can actually get into and grow your business in a logical way, following a course that works, then go check out remotecreative.io. You can join for free there. I post things there that I don't post anywhere else. I get more personal, I get more direct, and there are courses and resources. I do live events inside there where I teach things. And so if you want to check that out, please go see Remote Creative. It's free for now to join. And I've heard that every time someone joins, a puppy finds a bone. And if you want to listen to this show on the go, you can check out the audio version over at anchor.fm/brand or die. We're also on Apple Podcasts and Spotify as well. And I'm not going to persuade you here, but I'm going to hopefully inspire you that if you're interested in getting one of these hats, I have a store. It's called brandordie.store. And I didn't just make these for me. This is my company slogan and whatnot. It's the name of this show. But if you want to support the Brand or Die message with your own clients and you do branding, then hey, you're perfectly free to sport the Brand or Die message and use that same messaging with your own clients. I created it as just a way to help emphasize to people the importance of branding. And so this is something that I kind of made to share with others. And while you're still here, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and click like if you hate vacuuming as well. And until next time, life is short, brand or die.